You're listening to PitchTALKS, bringing you the game.
Welcome to a brand new episode of Bringing You the Game by PitchTALKS. I'm joined by my co-host Sam, and this week I'm very glad to introduce you to Chris Brindley MBE, the chair at Rugby League World Cup 2021. Good afternoon, Chris. Thrilled to have you on Bringing You the Game. How are you today?
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for asking. It's an absolute pleasure to have been invited. So thank you so much to you and Sam for the invite.
No, absolutely. I mean, just going by your experience, which we'll start getting on straight away, I'm so excited to have you on. So I think it's fair to say you have quite a few senior roles going on at the moment, from the Rugby League World Cup to the Premier League. However, before we discuss those roles in greater detail, I'd love to understand the very beginning. So where it all started for you, from your love for sport, or was it a certain moment that kick-started your career?
Oh, thanks, Mitch. Let me take you back a long, long way. I'm 56 now. So I'm going to take you back to when I was 3 months old. My father walked out on my mum and my brother and me when I was 3 months old, and we had a pretty tough upbringing. We lived in a council flat in Manchester, and I wasn't particularly academic at school. But what I did at school was absolutely adore sport. And I had a wonderful PE teacher called Mr. Woods, and he just allowed me to express myself through sport. And what he then used sport to do was teach me some wonderful life values. So Mr. Woods, alongside my mum, just gave me this love of sport, but also taught me some really key skills about communication, about teamwork, about preparation, about how to win properly, how to lose properly, problem solving. And actually, when I crossed the white line, whether that was football, cricket, athletics, I just forgot everything that was going on at home and in life, and just loved being around teammates and the dressing room as it was. And that love of sport has never left me. And I always made a commitment that when I was in a position to do so, I would give sport everything back it gave me. So that, I played for Manchester Boys at football, Greater Manchester Boys, County FA, never good enough really to be a pro. So I went into a career of banking, and through getting my coaching badges in football, that completely transformed my career. I learned how to coach in the workplace as well as on the football field. And as a result of building high-performing teams at work, I was fortunate enough to become the managing director of Natwest for the North of England and Scotland. And but the moment I got that position, that was the moment when, on my 40th birthday, I woke up and set a goal that by the time I was 50, I'd be a respected sports administrator. I remember my wife saying, "But you're a banker." I think that's what she said. What I realised, I had to go and do my apprenticeship all over again, even though I was an exec of a bank, and I was 40 years of age. But I knew I had to go and learn the ropes, and that's what I did. I became the chair of a sports charity in Greater Manchester to learn and also give back, and that was voluntary. The local county FA, Manchester County FA, that I played for in the youth team, we were the first ever county FA to have a non-executive director, and I was one of those. So giving back then to football. And as a result of that, you get to meet lots of different people. And I brought some key business disciplines to the world of sport that I was involved in. Things like the balanced business scorecard, the service profit chain. And as a result of that, those organisations that I worked with grew in all aspects of what we were trying to achieve, making people more healthier, growing the game at all levels, for football, for example, and introduction of disability sports and disability football and women and girls football. And as a result of that, you just get immersed in sport. So when I got to my 50th birthday, I stepped down from all full-time work and created a portfolio. And that portfolio has got some sport in it, whether that's the chair of the Rugby League World Cup. I'm the senior non-exec director for the Rugby Football League. I'm chair of Sporting House, and some of your listeners will be aware of the names of the people, the directors rather than the name itself. And that's Rebecca Adlington, OBE, Beth Tweddle, MBE, Steve Parry, all Olympians. And we help people learn how to swim, and we help people learn how to do gymnastics. And then I've got some traditional businesses that I still do. And the Premier League is one where I'm the business mentor to the Elite Academy Manager Programme. And that's working with some great academy managers and academy directors. And again, that's all about growing people, not just growing footballers, but growing better human beings. And I'm a trustee of a charity called Switch the Play. And Switch the Play is a charity that was founded to help athletes their transition journey. And a lot of people think the journey starts when the career ends. Well, actually, we want people to think about that transition journey through their athletic and sporting career, because better people make better athletes. And plus, the sad thing about being an athlete is you never know when your career will end. You really want to hope it's age that times you out. But often if you're a young academy footballer, maybe it's the decision of the academy manager or director or the coach that maybe signal an end to your career. Some people don't qualify for either the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games, and sometimes the funding gets cut. Sadly, some people's career gets ended by serious injury. So all of that time, it's about helping others grow. And because I've been very fortunate to have some great people that supported me, my sporting journey is about helping others, and I'm really passionate about that.
You're listening to Pitch Talks.
One of the roles I'd love to explore further is your role at the chair of the Rugby League World Cup. What does your role consist of there?
Well, I think the job of any board member is to set the strategic direction and be of support and challenge to the executive team. And it's interesting, a lot of non-execs think it's their job to run the business. It's not. That's the job of the exec. They're in it day in, day out. So I think we get paid our brains, not our hands. So if I look at the Rugby League World Cup, chairing the board, I've got the most amazing board with some outstanding people, not just from sport, but all aspects of life, and it reflects the tournament we're trying to produce. Also, my responsibility is to sit down with the CEO weekly, and we chat about what are the key things that are happening in our sport. And pre-COVID, there was a lot happening. You can imagine with COVID, other things to discuss now. But also, I think running a global tournament, your responsibilities are to manage multiple stakeholders as well. And as the chair, my relationship with those stakeholders, that is UK Sports, who are responsible for global events in this country. I've got the International Rugby League because it's their rights that we are using to host the 3 World Cups. So there's not just one World Cup. I'm so proud to say we're the first global tournament in history to run 3 World Cups concurrently. That's the Men's Rugby League World Cup, the Women's Rugby League World Cup, and the Wheelchair Rugby League World Cup. And we run them all 3 with the finals, wheelchair being in Liverpool on the Friday night, and a double header at Old Trafford for the men's and women's final. And again, double headers is going to be just great because we believe in equality, believe in diversity, and I think our tournament values reflect that. So managing the stakeholders, Treasury, because Treasury and government are supporting the bid through UK Sport. We've got a responsibility to work with the national federations, whether that's the Rugby Football League in England or whether that's the Cook Islands, or for the women, we've got Brazil playing this year. For the men's, we've also got Jamaica. For the wheelchair, we've got Norway. So it'll be the first ever Rugby League tournament with representation from Scandinavia and also South America. So we really want the tournament to be world class. We're being bold and brave. It'll be the best ever Rugby League World Cup. In terms of other things we're really proud about, is we'll be the first global tournament to pay equal prize money for men, women and wheelchair. And also when it comes to women and wheelchair, we'll be the first time that the Rugby League World Cup has ever paid participation fees to the women and the wheelchair, and those participation fees are the same as the men. Part of that World Cup is really sitting down with the board and understanding what our goals and our causes. We're hugely proud of the fact that it's 3 tournaments in one. And actually, we just then got to deliver the tournament. We've got some financial goals to achieve because we want to sell out every game. We want to make sure it's the most digital World Cup ever. We're delighted that our broadcast partner, the BBC, have agreed to show all 61 games live, with a minimum of 16 being on television. And we're hoping that'll be more.
Chris, I presume the rest will be available on the BBC Sport website throughout the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely, red button, and that's going to be great. We've selected some really big venues, so we're going to open at St James's Park in Newcastle. That'll be England v Samoa. We are holding almost all the games in the north of England. We chose the north for the World Cup, and only 2 games will be played outside the north. One will be in Coventry, because next year Coventry is the European City of Culture. And what better way to show diversity of culture than playing rugby league in Coventry? And the only other game to be outside of the north of England will be at the Emirates Stadium, and that'll be the semi-final, which I'm hoping will involve England, and it'll be the first ever non-football game ever to be held at the Emirates. Although some of the Arsenal fans that I know say there's been a few games that hasn't involved much football at the Emirates. But I'll let the Arsenal fans, and Mitch is shaking his head vigorously there, because clearly he's a gooner.
I haven't seen a proper football game played at the Emirates since we moved to the Emirates. So I don't know. I'd love to know what Arsenal fans are saying the games that we have seen.
Look, I'm a Man United fan. At least you boys have won a trophy this year. So,
at Wembley, not the Emirates.
Yeah, I know. That's true. But so yeah, just the Rugby League World Cup. It's a wonderful opportunity for personal growth for me, chairing a global tournament. And whilst COVID has created lots of different scenarios, actually, there's not many chairs of a global tournament can say they've chaired a global tournament through a pandemic. So, I'm learning all the time, and we were hoping that we would be the only global tournament in 2021, and that was the original plan until you get the pandemic and then the Olympics move into 2021 and the Euro men's footballs move into 2021. So basically, we're going to be the icing on the cake of a wonderful year of sport, but you'll get to see it in its entirety in England. And there ain't many opportunities in life to go and watch the likes of Cook Islands, Papua New Guinea, both men and women's team play. And when you actually look at the Pacific Islands in particular, there's some wonderful culture to experience. And often the Pacific Islanders pray together before the game. They then knock 10 bells out of each other, try to beat each other on the pitch. And as soon as the final whistle goes, they come together and pray again. And again, there ain't many tournaments in any sport, in any part of the world, where you see such wonderful opportunity to experience the culture. And I'm really hoping that rugby league does attract some new fans, because it is an athletic game. It's a fast-paced game. It's very physical, but very skillful, very technical. And the ball is in play more than almost every other sport, because we don't have restarts of scrums. And at the moment, due to COVID, with no scrums at all. So that means there's even more plays happening in the game.
I can certainly attest to that, having sort of played a little bit of league, but a lot of union. The union, the ball is in play for less than 50%, and this is at amateur level that I play. The ball is in play at less than 50% of the time, because you got people like me that are going, hang on, give me a minute before we scrum. Whereas playing league, it's just like they're gone. It's like, okay, back to the try line it is then.
Sam, you're absolutely spot on, and I love rugby union. I love all sport, so I'm not going to say it, but I do look at rugby union and go, they could do with the rest. And if you're winning and there's only a few minutes on the clock, it's amazing how many times the referee has to reset the scrum and then the clock goes. But maybe that's just a coincidence, or maybe it's just playing the rules right to the edge.
I think you nail on the head there. Yeah, absolutely. If we're up and there's 5 minutes going, all of a sudden my ankle starts hurting. Got a stitch. Got to retie my shoelaces. There's all the tricks of the trade come out. Whereas as you sort of alluded to, league is very much as soon as that tackle's made, you're up and you're going again, and the ball is in play 95% of the time, as opposed to sort of probably closer to 45% of the time in union.
And you've always got to retreat to be in line with the referee, otherwise you're offside. So you tend not to have many restful moments in league.
No. You also tend not to have as many passengers in the team. And I'm putting that lightly, because I tend to be one of those passengers in the team at Union, where you can make your tackle, roll over, stand up, and make another one. Whereas in league, it's once you've made it, retreat 10 and have another go.
Yeah, that's it.
You're listening to Pitch Talks, bringing you the game.
One thing I wanted to touch on quickly was, I don't know how involved you were of the slight change of format from the last World Cup, where there were 14 teams, so obviously upping it to 16 this time. Obviously with the time difference and everything, it was a little bit more difficult for sort of us over here to watch.
We want to grow the game, and as well as having 16 men's teams and 8 women's and 8 wheelchair, we've also got a wonderful international development programme whereby we are going out to emerging nations as well to take the trophy, which we do, and then we go out there and do some real good work in schools and colleges. So we've been out to Nigeria, already with where the African Nations of Rugby League was being held, and there's Cameroon Rugby League, and it's just a great game. And North America, as you know, we've got Toronto Wolfpack, and there are plans for Ottawa to join. And again, just the sport of rugby league has always been innovative, and therefore we just wanted to grow the game. So that's why we've increased the number, and we could have had more teams with ease. Yeah. So in future World Cups, I think there'll be a qualifying tournament.
Yep.
And that will hopefully grow the game to even more teams when 2025 venues announced. So it was about growing the game and making it a more global sport rather than just an M62 corridor sport.
This is Pitch Talks.
One of the things as well that I'm very interested to explore with you is your role at the Her Spirit, the focus towards the mind, body and community, the focus on mental health. I think it's fair to say that in all sports, in all ways of life, on and off the field, mental health is quite rightly getting the recognition, attention and awareness that it's been so calling out for a while. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what you're doing at Her Spirit.
Yeah, of course. And before I do that, Mitch, just very quickly go back to the World Cup. We were the first ever global tournament to launch a mental health charter. And that was launched by Prince Harry, who's the patron of the Rugby Football League and also the World Cup. So you're absolutely right. Mental health is a key issue. And I think it's only been exacerbated in many people over recent months, not being able to get out, socialise, go to place of work. Because people talk a lot about working from home. I've spoken to people where it feels like they're living at work. And that's a very, very different feeling. I am mindful of it. So going back to Her Spirit, I was chair of a sports charity for over 10 years. And the aim of that sports charity was for the benefit of activity to positively impact the lives of people in and around Greater Manchester. And that was through not sport per se, but activity. Some people may not have the health to be as active. So therefore, we wanted to ensure their mental well-being was there. And when you talk about the fuel, it was about making sure people eat well. And I stepped down 2.5 years ago from the charity. We have the code of governance, as I said earlier. Anybody that's chair of an organisation can do a maximum of 12 years. And it was time for me to step down under the code. And lots of people have asked me to get involved in lots of different things because it's pro bono, it's voluntary. And nothing quite felt right. There was lots of good causes, but nothing intuitively felt it was this until I met the founders of Her Spirit. And Her Spirit looks at, in particular, females in the UK and looks at activity rates. And females are less active in the UK than males. And actually, when you start segmenting that into some socioeconomic groups or some ethnicity groups, actually the activity levels are considerably lower. And therefore, with Her Spirit, it was around really looking at female population and being of support. And that we wanted to create a community, whether that was a virtual community or a physical community. And obviously in the last few months, it's been virtual, to really support people on their journey of being healthier physically, healthier mentally. And fuel and food is one of the ways that you can set about being healthier. So Her Spirit just felt so right. And I'm privileged to chair the advisory board as well as being a director. And, it's great that we've got an app that people can access. We do a podcast. We do some great live events. And just some of the stories of people whose lives have been transformed already are just so inspirational that it's a real motivator to take the Her Spirit message and its credo to the wider female population.
You're listening to Pitch Talks.
How challenging has it been to continue developing this community with the coronavirus happening? Obviously, everyone having to be in lockdown, staying at home. So how have you had to change your format or your method to reach out to people?
One of the things about Her Spirit was to be a social movement. So groups of people perhaps on the same journey, at the same point in the journey, maybe people who can't run a marathon yet but don't want to be meeting up with people who do triathlons. So we wanted communities to get together physically, and we created some events pre-COVID for that to happen. Yes, we've gone virtual and we've gone online, but we've had some great events. We've got people doing yoga, people doing Pilates. We've got some amazing instructors, because there are some benefits of lockdown, which mean people aren't travelling. So what we've tried to do is use some of that time to say, don't let our time evaporate or be just consumed with anything else. Can you ring fence some of that time to do things in the morning? And Joe Wicks has done it with the children in this country in terms of virtual PE lessons. And we've adapted and done the same thing as well during various points of the day. Some of the classes are available after they've gone live through recordings. So we've adapted really well. We've had great support from Sport England that have provided some funding for both the classes and the podcasts. And it's about just being available to support the community, whether that's face-to-face or whether that's online or through the app or through various podcasts and programmes.
You're listening to Pitch Talks.
So then I think just the only other role that we'd like to discuss with you, and you briefly mentioned it earlier, is about your business mentorship at the Premier League. So obviously developing and supporting football academies worldwide. Could you give us a little bit of insight into the day-to-day role of that?
I think the Premier League done an outstanding job here. So they've taken roles in the academy, and actually what they've created this wonderful development plan for different roles within the academy, whether that's for a coach or whether it's for the academy director, and it's really in depth. And when you think about it, it's absolutely the right thing to do, because one of the things that academy footballers have is a pathway, whether they join at 8s or 9s and they go through and they play at 14, at 16, at 18, at under 23, and ideally we'd want them to go on to play first team football. So it's great that athletes themselves always have pathways. And what the Premier League's done is recognise that the coaches need a pathway as well to become better at who they are, better at what they do, and actually grow people. And we've got different types of coaches and mentors, whether that is about the elite performance level, whether that is about the sports psychology level. And I come in as the business mentor. My background is Natwest, British Gas, and my last exec role was Metro Bank. So I understand how to run big businesses, complex businesses. I'm proud of Metro starting on the 29th of July with no customers in 2010, no deposits, no loans. And, within a couple of years, we've taken that by a million customers. So I think I know how to provide growth for a startup. And actually, a lot of the academy directors, they really are just great people in terms of football knowledge, and they understand a lot of the football technical aspect. Not all of them have ever had access to how to read balance sheet, how to present some of the non-footballing aspects. So that will be operations, that could be risk, that could be ranges of communication, because you're communicating with parents, you're leading other coaches, and you could be, as academy director, you could have 8 or 9 line reports and actually understanding employment law. And again, by using me, I'm privileged. I get to visit some of the wonderful academies with some great people who've got the most amazing appetite for learning about not just the coaching and the football side, but running that bigger business, because we all do it. We all start off by our first job leading ourselves, and ultimately when you start leading business, you do less of the day-to-day technical stuff and more of the leadership role. So it's just a privilege for me to work with the Premier League and work with these academy directors.
I think a lot of people, just as you've just alluded to, see the glitz and the glam of Saturday football in the Premier League and think that is what the Premier League encompasses. And more importantly, I think, as you said, is the actual growth of the person and the growth of the player.
Sam, you're spot on. I think the well-being of the athlete, I believe, should be ahead of the winning, because I've seen, and it's well documented in some sports, that the winning has become more important than the well-being. That isn't right. We're all human beings, and particularly when you're dealing with children, let's remember they're protected under the United Nations Human Rights Act. They are children, and they should have a childhood, and that childhood shouldn't be ripped away from them. And that's why, again, I think what the Premier League do and the academies, which is absolutely, don't just do the regulatory requirements like safeguarding, this duty of care, not just to the child but to the parents also, because you are working with the family unit. And the evidence is clear that more people don't make it than do. So therefore, you've got a responsibility to ensure that the transition out of sport is one that has the welfare and well-being of the athlete, the child, uppermost and foremost in their mind. And that's, again, hats off to the Premier League for the programme that they've got. It's, some organisations do get bad press, but I have to turn around and say, I think what the Premier League are doing here is simply outstanding. And just an example, you mentioned earlier, I was fortunate enough to attend the virtual Premier League Academy Awards, and there was an award to a footballer that didn't make it as a professional footballer, but actually has gone on to be an outstanding Royal Marine. As a result of that, he won the Alumni Award, and he attributes so much of his success to Jason Wilcox and the academy team at Manchester City that actually gave him, again, such a wonderful platform for which, even though he didn't make it as a footballer, he's gone on to his chosen career. He's thoroughly enjoying it. He's hugely successful, and that's as a result of the Premier League initiative. And there's another guy that night called Tony Whelan. Tony Whelan works for the academy at Manchester United and won the Eamon Dolan Award. Eamon sadly passed away when he was working for the academy at Reading, and the award's in his name. And Tony's been at Man United a number of years, and what was really wonderful for me to watch was he had some wonderful online tributes from people who had been involved with him in his time at Manchester United. One of them was Sir Alex Ferguson, who basically spoke all about the importance of the academy, and Tony in particular, for bringing people through like Jesse Lingard and Marcus Rashford. And then there was a wonderful story from Tom Heaton. Tom was at the academy at United, went on to Burnley, played for England, Aston Villa. And Tom didn't talk about Tony the coach, he talked about Tony the human being. And he's got such fond memories of Tony looking after him at the Dallas Cup, then Tony going and being with United's youth team at Marseille, and just stories about what a wonderful human being. And Tony, huge levels of humility, but what a wonderful way to recognise the impact that one person had, not just on the footballer. And Tony can list many internationals of people who've been under his tutelage at Manchester United's academy, but recognise him as just a wonderful human being.
You're listening to Pitch Talks, bringing you the game.
I think that brings me on quite nicely to my penultimate question. If there was someone listening to this, or hopefully there'll be a couple of people listening to this, looking to fulfill a role either in the Rugby League World Cup or looking to have an end goal of being a business mentor, being a non-exec, being the chair, where would you say they should begin to build this journey?
I can only give advice based on my journey, but I talk about a mnemonic that was first shared with me by the late, great Jack Welch. Jack was the Chief Executive Officer for General Electric, and he took GE from being a good company to an outstanding company. And the mnemonic of PI, the P stands for performance, the I stands for image, and the E stands for exposure to decision makers and influencers. And typically, Jack articulates that performance is important, but lots of people perform at similar levels to you. So what's the real differentiator? And often Jack spoke about image. So actually, what image do you want to create? Because everything you say, everything you do actually does start to create your image in the eyes of others. And I often talk about professional sports people where I see some high performance, but some poor image, poor behaviour, maybe not team player, maybe late for training, and maybe how they conduct themselves on social media. And therefore, performance isn't the differentiator, because if I'm a commercial partner and you've got a poor image, I'm unlikely to sign you up. Whereas somebody like Roger Federer, who quite frankly has an outstanding image, to the point where he received the biggest commercial contract of his life a couple of years ago, even though he's in his late 30s. Just goes to show that image is what some people would want from you. So the image is important. And my experience is a lot of people don't think about the image they want to craft. So I'd ask people to think about that. And then even if you've got great performance and a great image, but nobody knows who you are, how can they offer you a job? How can they find you to even offer you the job? So exposure to decision makers and influencers. And part of that is a lot of people want to become the chief exec of the FA. They think they deserve the right. Ultimately, I think I spoke earlier about going back and doing my apprenticeship at the age of 40, even though I was an exec director of one of the biggest organisations in the country, and a successful one at that. So there's a great book by Matthew Syed called Bounce. And Matthew Syed talks about mastery, and he talks about having to put in the hours. So whilst a lot of people want to work in sport, not everybody wants to put the hours in. And typically, you would start with maybe a local voluntary organisation by showing them that your performance is good and your image is good. And as a result of that, you will be exposed to decision makers and influencers. Start going to conferences and find out what makes people in sport successful. I was a banker, remember? And I'm privileged to work in sport now, but I literally had to do 2 or 3 jobs. One that brought the groceries home from myself and my family. But actually, instead of watching Love Island, I'd go and support the charity, and I'd go to Manchester County FA, and I'd look at how we could make that better. I'd network with people, offer my services free of charge, and I think that's important. From a vacancies point of view, UK Sport have a vacancies page, so I'd always be looking at that almost every day. I know there's websites, Global Sports Jobs, for example, or Training Ground Guru websites, as well as performance, that image and the exposure to decision makers. That's what I think played a huge part in my transition from the business world into the sporting world.
Well, I think that very nicely wraps up what's been a fascinating listen to you, Chris. The stuff you've said today, well, I found it really unique, I found it refreshing, and I found it exciting to listen to, especially the way you were talking about the Rugby League World Cup for next year. I think I've definitely got some homework to do this weekend. That concludes another episode of Bringing You the Game by Pitch Talks. Chris, thank you so much for your time today.
Mitch, Sam, can I just thank you guys? Look, this is a great opportunity for me to share not just my story, but actually my passion, which is sport, and I hope your listeners, who I'm sure are as passionate and obsessed about sport as we are, they'll get some value from it. And I'll make the offer that I am on LinkedIn, and if any of your listeners want to connect with me, if you mention the fact that they've listened to the podcast, I will accept. I get lots of people who give me no reason for wanting to connect with me, so I do have to be a bit wary, but I'm more than happy to support any of your listeners in any way, and hopefully we get the chance to do this again sometime.
Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely.
We hope you've all enjoyed, and make sure you tune in next time for more compelling stories, career tips on how to get into sport. So until then, thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bringing You the Game by Pitch Talks. For more information on our latest episodes, careers advice, or to even get involved as a guest, get in touch with the team at mitch@pitch-talks.com. That's mitch@pitch-talks.com, or send us a message on any of our social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in. Bringing you the game. Pitch Talks. All Pitch Talk content is copyright protected. Pitch Talks.